Not quite ready for it to be this cold yet, or rainy, or windy. Everybody, at least that's here, y'all have power back? Mm-hmm. No?
I feel you.
Never lost it.
Never lost it?
Never lost.
I'm not supposed to get it back till like Monday.
Oh my
They
gosh.
said mine would be at least like 2 or 3 weeks.
At least y'all are getting protection.
Where do y'all live?
I live in Perry, but everything in town's completely ripped off, and like the power line to our house, like it fell, and then the wires got ripped off, and then it died. I'm staying with my mom right now. She has a generator and whatnot.
Oh
Who's
my
y'all's
gosh.
power provider?
Mine's
Jamie.
CREC.
Okay, I have Central Electric, which I guess.
Oh my gosh. So what are y'all doing in the meantime? You're staying with your mom?
I'm staying in my dark cold house.
Pulling my hair out.
Oh, I'm really sorry, y'all. I have an electric blanket. If anybody needs
I think
one.
it'll be back
That'd be
before
great
then.
if we had electricity.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I appreciate y'all still coming to class today. It feels weird to kind of just like pick up and act like nothing's going on when there's a lot of stuff going on. So know that I do acknowledge that, but we're gonna try to get on as normal as possible. Come on in, come on in. So since it's been a week since we met, just a quick refresher. We started talking last week about ethical leadership. We talked about 3 main ethical theories that we're going to focus on. So ethical egoism, which means you do what's best for you. Altruism, which means you're going to do what's best for everyone else. And then utilitarianism, which is you're going to do what's best for the most people. And then we talked about this idea of the toxic triangle and how do unethical leaders or destructive leaders get into positions of power. How does that happen? And we talked about the fact that you have someone who we characterize as the destructive leader. We have susceptible followers, and then we have this conducive environment. So the goal for today is for us to kind of we're going to do our last case study for this class, but we're also going to kind of apply some other things about ethical theory. So any of y'all ever played the game Scruples before? Ever heard of it? So it's this game that kind of gives you scenarios, and you have to kind of try to figure out what's the right or wrong thing to do. We're going to play a little game of ethical scruples. So I'd like for you to pull out one of the scenarios here and read it out loud for everybody.
After closing a big deal, your manager surprises you with a warm, lingering hug. You tell your manager you're not comfortable with it.
Oh, did everybody hear that? Okay. Here's the situation again. We're going to kind of discuss what do you think should be done. After closing a big deal, your manager surprises you with a warm, lingering hug. Do you tell your manager you're not comfortable with this?
Is this like personally or like the scenario you don't like that?
You personally, what would you do? What would you do if you were in this situation?
It depends on my relationship with the manager. I mean, like in the past, like I've had managers that I would be okay with that because
Okay.
I have a little bit more of a personal relationship.
Okay.
Maybe family friend or something like that.
Okay.
If it's just a random, then yeah, I'd probably like.
Okay.
No thanks.
Would there ever be a time it might be an issue even if you know the person in a work environment? I don't know. What else do you think? What would y'all do if you were in this situation?
Oh, just yell COVID and run.
You'd what?
I'd just yell COVID and run.
Like you should have touched me. Okay. Anybody else do something different? Your manager gives you a lingering hug. What's the difference between a hug and a lingering hug? Is there?
Are we talking like a whole squeeze pat thing, or like a sexual hug? Like is that what you're?
How do you interpret lingering? Like think about it. Is there a difference between someone giving you a hug and then that lingering hug, right? Like, do y'all kind of get that awkward feeling when I say lingering? Huh?
Like is it just like a lingering, like a little kid who just needs a hug? Or
Like they're hugging a couple seconds too long.
What do you
Maybe
think?
this is all about hand placement. What's happening?
Yeah?
Because I'm not gonna lie, my love language is physical touch, so I'm just like, bring
All
it
the
on,
hugs.
let's do it. But if the hand placement's weird, then maybe the no-no square has been. And is it a
You
male or a
can't touch me
female?
there. I don't know. So again, y'all are starting to get to this like when it would matter, when it would not. So for you, Bree, would it matter if it's a woman versus a man?
Not really. I mean, I'm not a huggy person, I guess. So like them coming in for a hug, first off, I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah.
So any hug, I'm like, that's too long.
Okay. Anybody else? What would you do? Why would you say something?
I'm not like a physical touch person, and I never have been, and I just think like one of my roommates, I didn't know any of my roommates when I came to school, and so I was having a rough day, and like she tried to go in for a hug, and I'm just like, no, like I'm just really not comfortable with that, and that was kind of hard because it made things awkward. But then a few weeks later, like I was at an event, and this girl that I don't even live with her, I've seen her maybe once in my entire life, and she like came up and gave me a hug, and it was very out of the blue. And it just made me really uncomfortable, and I like didn't feel like I could say anything there because like I've seen this girl once, and I didn't want to make it awkward because I remembered how it was with my roommate. But like looking back, I wish I would have just been like, hey, like that wasn't cool because I thought about it all day. It's like how awkward it made me feel, and like how I would never want her to do that again because I'm going to be seeing her more in the future, and so like I would just want to make it more comfortable. I just felt like it made it really awkward. Like I didn't even want to look at her the rest of the day. So I think I would say something, especially if it was somebody like a manager who you're seeing every day for work, and just like find a way that makes it comfortable for both people instead of just like this awkward tension because you're not comfortable with a hug.
Yeah. So, we're not really talking about the issue of is it unethical to give people hugs, but we're talking about in the workplace with your manager and it's a lingering hug. Would you react to that differently than just like a normal hug with, even in the situation of like maybe I didn't want to hug them, but I kind of know, what could be different about the workplace environment?
I would say just like professionalism and boundaries. I was like, because I agree with them. Like, I'm not really like a physical touch person either. So like, and boundaries are something important to me, especially like in a workplace, because I want to feel comfortable being there.
Yeah. So would you, it asked that question, would you say something?
Yes.
Would you? How would you go about doing that?
I would probably just let them know like that made me really uncomfortable, and then just like kind of explain like I really don't like you know what I mean, like you established like these are my boundaries, and I want them to be respected in the workplace.
Yeah. Who would say they probably wouldn't say something? Why not?
Well, first of all, I love hugs and I hate confrontation. I really think that's just
Mother Teresa would be like, I'll just take the hug, right? Like, sorry. If y'all weren't here last Thursday, Bailey was called Mother Teresa. So.
I don't know, I feel like I love hugs and I feel like people who are willing to give them need them the most. So like I feel like a manager in that position might be like, him or her didn't know any other way to like congratulate you. And so like if they go in for a hug, I won't say anything about it.
But would you think that there's a difference between a congratulatory hug and a lingering hug?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be awkward, but I'd be like, okay.
Can we act out this lingering hug? I'm just
Come here. Come here. If you volunteer.
What kind of hug are we talking?
So
is it like,
I'm thinking, like,
is it full
because
throttle? Are we doing a side hug?
So
is it a
I'm
side
a
hug where
hugger.
your hand goes, woo?
This
Or
is like breaking all COVID policy here. But I'd be like, if I were a manager and you did so, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, good job, congratulations. This
Okay.
scenario is like, oh my
Okay.
gosh, Allison, so good, so good. This is nice. And then we like go, oh, okay. Not yet. So, it's a little weird.
Okay,
I love you,
I
but
see it.
I don't. So just thinking about it, why, again, regardless of like what is the right thing, there's not really a right or wrong, right, in that situation because there's no, but some things to think about. What are the business's policies? with stuff like that, right? Why do you think people may not speak up about it? Beyond just being like, I'm fine with it.
Probably because, oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, probably because like, position is power, so if a manager is in that position, you know, they have the ability to like make decisions regarding your job.
Uh-huh. Yep. What were you gonna add to that?
I just think it depends if it's like a common occurrence. Maybe it happens a bad thing. Maybe it was unintentionally offered. But if it keeps happening, then maybe then. But also, you don't want to confront something that's not an issue.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a one-time just weird thing.
You know, in my first job, I was young. I was 24, 25, I don't remember, 24, like first job after I finished my master's. And I worked with this really nice older man. Like, I don't know exactly how old he was. He wasn't quite gray yet. Felt older. He kind of reminded me of my parents. And at the college I worked at, he was like the music band professor person. Super nice, a little awkward from time to time. But he'd always come up. Erin,
Oh, that's feel uncomfortable.
I know. And like, not only would he say hi, but he would just do this.
Y'all, this is weird.
That's when I hear the word linger, I think of that. And it would happen one time and you're just like, oh, he's just like grandpa, right? Like, it's fine. Then it happens again and again. And then you start to find out that like, there's other women I work with that he's doing this to. And none of us spoke up about it. Why do you think we maybe did it? We were young. Kind of goes back to this idea of power, of like, if I do speak up, what happens? After I left there, he actually was fired a year later because there was pretty intense sexual harassment charge against him. That I was just like, oh, maybe if we had spoken up, we could have kept that from happening to that individual. But there's just kind of this idea of like what is appropriate behavior in a workplace, right? And we have to realize that like maybe we don't do the ethical thing because there's power at play sometimes in how this goes. Let's pick out another situation here. Read it loud for us.
You've made a verbal agreement with a supplier. A competitor offers you a deal for 50% less. Do you take the deal?
What's the
Okay.
ethical thing to do?
I think if you've already made the deal, obviously you take the first one and just kind of move on with the deal maybe, and then maybe discuss with the one you agreed with, and be like, you know, someone offered me less, I'm gonna have to go with them next time or whatever.
Yeah, so you have a verbal agreement with someone to supply you a product. Their competitor offers you a deal for 50% less after you've made this verbal agreement. Do you take the deal for 50% less?
Good thing we just talked about contracts and ag law, because technically it's not a done deal because it's not a written agreement. So you're not necessarily like it's not confirmed, but ethically you could probably give that original like supplier a call and say, hey, I just had an offer to get this 50% off, like, I know we talked about this, but can we do anything better? And maybe go from there.
Okay. So legally, you're not bound to the agreement. Ethically, though, what would you do? How many of you are like, you'd take the deal and run? Okay. How many of you are like, something just doesn't feel right? What about it doesn't feel right?
I think the big deal in that is communication. I think communication is key. You know, you just call them, like she said. You know, I say, hey, it's been offered to me for half of what you're offering it. Can you make anything, or but what can we do here? If not, then just kind of weigh out your options.
So when you choose to kind of go, when you're making that decision what to do, and you're saying, you know what, I think I would still kind of lean towards this idea of going with the competitor, what ethical theory are you operating by? Which of the three? You're doing what's best for you, right? So it's egoism. Yeah. Take us out one more.
You've just been promoted to manager at the branch where you work. The person you're dating has applied for a job there and would be reporting to you. Is that okay?
So you are now a manager, and who you're dating has applied for a job and would be reporting to you. What do you do? Is it okay to hire them?
A lot of places don't allow that, relationships within the workplace, so I'm just throw it out for you,
Okay.
kind of straightforward.
So why do companies have those policies that don't allow spouses to work together or people who? But what if you never tell them that you're dating them? Like if you're not married to them,
That's even worse.
why is that worse?
You're not being honest with them. It's a huge conflict of interest.
But it's my personal
If
business.
you were to break up, I think it definitely,
Your
especially if he or she reports to you.
if your personal, that's like saying like if you have struggles that happen at home, but you bring those struggles to the workplace and it affects what happens to the workplace, that still doesn't mean you can't get punished for what you do. Like if you outlash because you were upset about something that happened in your personal life and that happens at work, like you can still be reprimanded and have those issues at work.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on what should be done differently? Or if it's okay?
I mean, I think it's okay. I mean, if you get along well enough and kind of like push your personal life aside. But this is coming from someone whose parents were city clerk and city manager together for years. And they worked well because they loved each other and they loved the town. And if anything happened at home, they left that at home. And so I think if you're willing to do that because you enjoy your job and you're there for the work, it's easy to split up if you want to.
Personally, I think it's sort of weird just because of the power dynamic there. I think if you're both working the same type of job, like on kind of the same level, it's a little different. But when one's reporting to another, like one is kind of higher up, I think it's a little weird.
Yeah. That hierarchy kind of throws it off there a little bit.
Even if you don't tell them, like, they're gonna find out eventually. I mean, I worked at a place here in Stillwater, and the girl started working there, and then he applied, and then he got the job, and he was also a cashier, and they just worked together, and none of us ever knew that they were dating, and then eventually, it just slowly all fell together, and then our manager found out about it, and she was like, I could lose my job for this, and she let him work there for a while, and eventually she basically said, I want to promote one of you to manager, but I can't with both of you here, so one of you has to leave, and it's no longer.
Yeah. Here's another scenario, a little less serious. You're at a hotel and conference center. You've arrived to your meeting early and haven't had a chance to eat breakfast yet. On your way to your meeting room, you walk by another meeting, and there's a table full of food and beverages outside the room. Your meeting has no food. Would you help yourself?
Hop in line. That's what I'm doing.
Hop it in.
Every time.
I couldn't.
You couldn't? Why not?
I'm so embarrassed.
I've done it. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't take a lot. I just take like a bagel and go.
Yeah. Anybody else?
There's a line, they're not gonna notice you.
You know how expensive conference food is? Like-
Yeah, but it doesn't even taste that good. That's the thing.
No food that is prepared in masses is ever going to be good. I feel that way about wedding food. If you're going to a wedding, don't expect it to be good. When people complain about the food, I'm like, they were preparing it for 100 people or 200. What did you expect? But yeah, I mean, like at conferences, even like continental breakfasts are like $15 a person when you pay for them. So is it okay to just hop in someone else's line and eat their food, or?
No, it's not okay, but I did do it once.
But does coffee count as food?
Are you paying for it?
No.
Coffee is free in the lobbies of most hotels.
Yeah,
That's
it's
very
complimentary.
That's a
And
lot.
in your room.
Okay, I'll skip the food.
So these are kind of examples of these like ethical dilemmas that we can be in, that again, like we're weighing, we're trying to figure out, well, what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, and we need to understand that kind of underlying what we decide is right or wrong are these ethical theories that we ascribe to. Here is another example for us to watch. Any of y'all watch the show What Would You Do on ABC? Okay, this is probably one of my favorites. Let's see what happens.
Hi. Hi. Where are your recipe books? They're right over there.
This is Tracy. She loves to cook and is always looking for new dishes to expand her repertoire.
That looks good. Hi, can you just hold this for me really quick so I can get her a picture? That will hurt.
Today, she's stirring up some trouble. What will people do when they see this sneaky chef
Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna...
ripping recipes right out of the book?
Just gonna take it with me. No, I don't have to print it out.
What would you do? Our cameras are rolling at Books and Greetings in Northvale, New Jersey, where this recipe for disaster is about to go down.
Oh, man, can you do me a huge favor? Can you just hold this for me for a moment? I just want to take a picture. Come over here. Sorry about you, I know you just want to.
At first, it seems this woman is on the same page.
It is, right?
All right, so first, what's the ethical dilemma here?
It's like videoing when you go to a movie theater.
Yeah, pirating information, plagiarizing, right? She's not paying for the cookbook, she's taking pictures out of it. What would you do if you were in this situation and you saw someone doing this?
I'd probably be in the same boat that lady is. That's smart.
Huh? That's smart.
Yeah, never thought of that.
How many of y'all are like, oh, I don't know what I do? Anybody's like on the fence?
I'd ask why she doesn't just get on Pinterest. That's my thing. Like,
Yeah?
it has all the recipes now.
Let's see what happens.
Actually, there's 3 pages. I don't think I have enough for paper. I'll do it. It's okay.
But as Tracy starts ripping,
Just take this snap. Because I don't want to learn the whole book. I just want this one recipe.
she kicks her out of her book club.
You know that? You just broke the book. No, there's still a lot of other recipes in here. You're crazy. You just did it illegal. That's not illegal. I'm not stealing the book.
She argues with that old, you break it, you buy it.
You're thinking that? Yeah, I'm not taking the book.
And when Tracy refuses to buy in,
Well, yeah, she just read the pages of the book. But that's the broken book here.
she sells her out.
So would there be a difference to you of her taking a picture versus ripping it out? Huh? Who in here says that you would tell on her? Turn her in. How many of y'all would say your business, not mine, walk away? Let's see what
What I
other.
would probably do is just like end up just grabbing the book and paying for it for myself.
Yeah.
Like I've actually been in situations like that before, and it's just like not worth the argument. But like you can just take care of it and it'd be done with.
No, I was looking through the magazine and she was holding the book. She just ripped this. That was already done. That one was already done. She do it. Where do you have those pages under your arm? Oh, it's just my notes. Can you show her? Can you show all of us with me? What?
How about we show her it's What Would You Do? Hi, what happened?
Oh my God. I was horrified.
You sounded the alarm right away.
Oh my God, because I love this store. This is such a community store. Why
What
would
recipe
anybody...
wanted her in?
Taking the picture of the recipe, I was kind of like, all right, you're a little lean, but breaking it, that was horrible.
We're rolling again.
Can you just hold this for me? Oh, sure, got a picture.
This woman gives our recipe seeker a hand.
I only want one recipe. It's like 3 pages thick. I'm gonna buy the whole thing anytime. Oh, have you ever done it? Oh, yeah.
shocked by what just happened. And she continues to watch page by page.
Yeah, keep ripping messages.
How does that feel? Do you copy these? Oh, good. Thank you so much. Does it bother you that I did it?
Some nervous laughter.
Here, hold these for me for a sec. Hold this. Let me see if I can flip it.
She looks uncomfortable,
I think that's it.
but she never stops her. Why not?
Hi, how are you?
I know.
You were in a tough position there, huh?
I didn't feel right about it.
I could see the look in your face. Taking a picture was one thing, right? And then she rips it out.
It was a tough position.
You covered for her.
I shouldn't have, though. I didn't know what to do. I'll just take a page.
Throughout the day, we see different reactions to our book battle. There's confusion, shock, and disapproval. And then along comes this man.
Somehow I feel like an accomplice.
Oh, no. Fine. Thank you. I'm just going to take the page.
He can't believe his eyes and quickly leaves the store. But on his way out, he alerts the manager.
That girl is really nice.
She is?
Before he drives away,
Really? How you doing, sir? What did she think?
Well, I know the owner of the store, you know.
Did you hear her rip out the food?
Yes, I did. I said, whoa, it's not right.
It's a mom and pop shop, right?
Yeah, there's so many big stores and online, and they're still selling books, and we gotta support the local stores.
but this last customer, in our book, she's a bestseller. Just like all the other shoppers today, she lends a helping hand while Tracy takes a shot of those recipes.
Gingerbread, that's good, right? Yeah, gingerbread. I'll just take that.
And tries to stop her.
You know, Miss Pauline, they're a book apartment bookstore. I'm just trying to save money. No, I can't do that. There's no way. So that's just a page or two because I'm going to take it another one out. You don't have to say something. You keep just anything. Then stop. So these are my friends here. It's from the store. I don't think it's a big deal, though. Yeah, stop. Stop. These are my friends. I can't steal from my friends.
Beautiful.
Should I just put it back in? Yeah. I went from the library, left a copy of it there.
She stands up for her neighborhood bookstore.
Hey, how are you? I'm John Quinones. She's not really stealing. It really upset you.
Yeah, these are my friends. I'll have a book or go to the library, but don't steal from my friends, please. Or anybody. Stealing is wrong.
That's very kind. You're a good friend. They're lucky to have you.
Those kind actions hit home for the owner of this wonderful bookstore.
I was very emotional and it brought tears to my eyes to have my customer and friend react that way.
It does impact a store like this?
Oh, it's a challenge, there's no doubt about it. And we rely on people like Jane who appreciate us and our friends and customers.
The moral of the story is, don't trust every friendly shopper you meet, because as we all know, you can't judge a book by its cover.
All right, so based off of that scenario, what do y'all think? What were some of your thoughts watching that?
I think it was interesting, like the second lady, when she came out, she was like, I should have said something, but she didn't. It was like, I don't know if she would have had a second thought, or if she would have, like, admitted it out loud to anybody, like, oh, I should have done something. I feel like we're all kind of in that position, like, oh, I really should have done something, but it's kind of awkward. I don't know, person, so.
Yeah. So thinking about that, actually having no action, so choosing not to turn her in, not to say anything, to kind of go along with it, to kind of be complicit. What ethical theory does that ascribe to? Egoism, utilitarianism, or altruism?
Egoism?
Egoism. Why?
Because you want to deal with what's not necessarily because you don't want to be uncomfortable or make them uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's considered egoism because you choosing to be complicit or not say anything is what is best for you because you don't want to be put in that awkward position of doing anything. What did y'all think of the man who like kind of complied, but then he turned her in, like telling the manager as he got in his car? How many of y'all said that's probably what I would do, is something like that?
You probably didn't want to be like in the same room as he did it because that's really uncomfortable sometimes. Like when you're telling on someone and it's like, yeah, that person right over there.
Yeah. So is that egoism, utilitarianism, or altruism?
I think it's like a phase, like he starts out egoism and then like turns into utilitarian, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit more utilitarianism. So this idea of doing what's best for the most. He still did a little bit of what was good for him. He wasn't necessarily confrontational with the woman. But then he did what was best for the bookstore owner by telling her someone was ripping pages out of a cookbook. So you see how that's kind of a mix of the two? The lady at the end, what did y'all think of her reaction? Pretty gutsy? Yeah. Anybody in here feel like that's what you would do? No.
I think if I had ties to the store like she did, then yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it was a store like Walmart, like maybe not. Like, I don't know. It's like a large department store.
Yeah.
Things happen at Walmart all the time.
Yeah.
I'd probably just like later like bring the book up to the front desk and be like, void this out.
Yeah, it's interesting because not all ethical scenarios are like this where you feel like you're like tattling on someone. But it did make me think of like my son is in this stage where like when he's playing with his friends and someone does something wrong, he's tattling. And I'm like, you don't need to tattle, y'all need to work it out. But then I'm like, why am I like, could there be some negative implications to teaching my kid not to tattle? Because, right, in situations like this, we're kind of taught, don't get involved, right? It's maybe not your place. But then that woman was like, like she had a very clear and defined sense of what was right and wrong. And she said, this is stealing. Like she was the first person to really kind of name it for what it was. And she didn't tattle, but she's trying to work through with the woman why stealing was wrong and help her come to that same conclusion too. Is that an example of egoism, utilitarianism, or altruism? Altruism. So altruism is this idea of doing what's best for others. Why was her reaction doing what was best for others?
She like put herself in a very uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
That no one else had, and then she like put the needs of the store and like her friends in front of her own.
Yeah, the needs of her friends in the store went above her own. Like whether she was going to feel comfortable or not, she did it. I would also say the needs of the person, the woman ripping the pages out of the book, was she trying to help her come to a more morally right stance on what she was doing? So again, she was putting her needs, trying to help her become more ethical, right? So definitely a display of altruism. We're going to do a case study that is pretty dicey. It's based on a true story, so this case study is going to have some actual news articles in it. You may or may not remember, it's been a little over 5 years ago, there was a huge peanut and peanut butter recall in the country because of food contamination of salmonella. Well, this is a story, or true story, about some things that happened with some peanut growers, peanut butter suppliers in New Mexico who were supplying peanut butter to Costco. Erin's going to pass out the case studies, and then I'm going to divide y'all into different groups, but I'll wait till everybody gets their copy first. Can I get one person from this side that would be willing to move and sit on this side over here? Thank you. So we're a little bit more even now. All right. So y'all are going to be a group. You're going to be a group. And you're going to be a group. Okay? And you're going to be a stakeholder group. So there's a lot of different people that are involved, or stakeholders that are involved in this case study. You are going to read through this case study from the stakeholder perspective that I provide you. And so the back of the very last page has the discussion questions that I want you, after you read through everything, to talk about in your group, but you want to answer them from the perspective of your stakeholder group. So in this particular scenario, we have a group that y'all are kind of the folks involved with the peanuts and the processing of the peanuts into peanut butter. So it's an organization called Sunland. Y'all buy from farmers. You contract with peanut farmers to buy their peanuts. You process it into peanut butter, and then you contract with folks like Costco, Walmart, however, to provide the peanut butter to them. So y'all are Sunland, the growers and the processors. This group here in the middle, y'all are Costco. So you are the company that is purchasing the peanut butter to put on your shelves to sell to consumers. That's what you need to focus on, is like, what is Costco's role in this? How would you answer these questions based on your role? This group here, there's a little twist to the plot. We have a food bank that's involved in this ethical dilemma. Y'all are representing the perspective of the food bank. And so you want to make sure you read through this, answer the questions based on what you think the food bank would respond. So take time in your groups, read the case study, and then again, I'd like for y'all to spend some time discussing these answers. We will come back together as a class at 10 o'clock, so that gives y'all 20 minutes to read and discuss, to then see what does each group think would be the right thing to do based off of your perspective. So you may read through this and you may have a personal opinion on what you think should be right. Set that to the side. I want you to think from the perspective of your stakeholder group. Okay? And Aaron and I will kind of just be wandering around, so if you have questions, holler at us, let us know. All right.
You're gonna be ethical.
Ready to get ethical.
Oh my gosh, I should have submitted the song they did. Let's get ethical, ethical.
You can still submit it. That could still be that's a good reminder. Don't forget there's an extra credit opportunity in this class. We've only had one person submit an extra credit so far. But when you see leadership in the news or in videos, submit it. Extra credit. So once you're done reading, start answering the questions on the back from your perspective.
Oh, my goodness. Good. I feel like it's one of okay. It's okay,
Make sure you discuss your answers as a group. Kind of hash out what the problem is and what your stance as a stakeholder group is going to be.
The questions are going to be answered in a group, not like yourself and then together,
Yeah.
like all together.
No, you're okay. I'm just trying to make sure we're all done. I couldn't see what page you were on. So it was stored in somebody's room?
I was confused on which warehouse. It was going to Costco's warehouse, so that's why they wanted to.
I don't know, I just think it's so, really affects the areas, because like,
After, cause they got
the
like a
next
shipment
plan
in.
could just screw them over in prices like that.
So they had already paid and received the shipment.
They hadn't paid yet.
Before
They received the shipment but hadn't paid yet.
Oh, so before they realized
Y'all are the cost.
this peanut butter is bad.
Leaking oil.
But at this point, did they know that they had outbreaks of salmonella from this plant?
So first outbreak started in 2012 and the Sunland filed for bankruptcy in 2013. Part of the reason they filed for bankruptcy is they weren't getting paid for the contract they had established with Costco, even though they provided the product.
You can actually go on to Google too, but had like answers.
So they didn't want to be.
Like peanut butter and so for the peanuts grown, if someone was the main buyer for them, then that's gonna be like a big like factor in where they find their peanuts now. If they were bankrupt and are being sold to like
I think just as a
Canada
food
now.
bait, I think we're initially pretty close.
So basically there's no peanuts without a processing plant at this point.
I don't think we want to risk like this thing. All the down already.
I think what would be best for somebody is if they could
Okay. So
I don't know why it's soon. So, oh, this thing has been like.
Stay.
No, that's perfect. I actually think what I'm going to do is have it stop
Okay.
and just turn it
Okay.
to face the class. Let's see. Yeah.
I don't know why you said
Oh, yeah. I don't remember. I was so similar. It was at the same time. Multiple brand names. So one thing you have to think about is that you have a brand name, but then you have the processors and stuff behind it that are operating differently. So you know, sometimes a processing plant, they process for multiple brands.
Costco never should have accepted the shipment.
I just remember when we had a really small theater in town and we were doing the Peter Pan play, and like all the peanut butter we used, like we would make snacks and everything with Peter Pan, and literally right in the middle they were just like, oh, huge outbreak, we can't make it anymore. And it was terrible.
And you mean when you go to like letter B, what's best for others?
How are y'all feeling at the food bank? Huh? How are y'all feeling as the food bank with this whole situation?
Okay,
Pretty frustrating because if it was tested already and we offered a pickup location, it could have saved Costco a lot of money. They could have got a write-off
salmonella broke out.
and we could have fed people.
Costco did
25 times. That's like the most devastating picture to me of it is just the jars of peanuts dumped.
We could have fed basically all of Mexico.
Okay, so outbreak happened, then it's over.
So think about like
Then Costco received shit.
what would be y'all's rebuttal to some of the reasons why they didn't donate it to the food bank. So we know, you know, it's food safety, stuff like that. How would you rebut that, those arguments for why it wasn't sent to y'all? So kind of make sure y'all talk about those things too.
FDA approved FDA was more.
Oh, did we not even buy it?
How about if we wanted to set in the warehouse, that would have no control over, so that means that we have it and have control over temperature, weather climate, like weather and stuff like that. Does that make sense? And is that leaky oil coming from?
Actually go out.
Like
The short, the short, you can just,
Yeah.
you can put to avoid a contamination.
I don't eat peanut butter after a month. After a month?
After a month? What?
Yeah.
It's good for like.
No, it tastes weird. Like if it's open and like I would either give it to the dog and like use that for her treat, or I just open up a new thing.
It does get oily.
We have a question about the timeline of this whole thing.
Okay.
Okay, so, correct me if I'm wrong. So, peanut butter is made, outbreak happens, outbreak is fixed, Costco receives shipments. Costco says, let's put it in the warehouse. So that's the timeline. Okay.
And then the
So yeah,
jars are
Costco,
leaky.
pay your bill, Costco.
Nothing.
An open jar of peanut butter lasts 3 to 4 months.
Did you Google that? Okay, so every group, have y'all gotten all your answers?
Sorry, you do not refrigerate the oil or separate. You can pick it up in. You don't worry about it.
Yeah, first thing, the whole thing.
Chill it. Chill it. I don't need that negativity in my life today.
But at the same time, they did own the peanut butter, so technically, if no one would have said not a word, no one would ever know
So,
that we threw it in the dump.
Allison, clarify your timeline question.
Yes.
Okay.
We did pay for it.
Costco
From
never
a
fully
stakeholder's perspective, what is
put
what's
the peanut
best?
butter in their warehouse. They never fully accepted the shipment from Thailand.
Absolutely.
So the shipment went to Costco, but then they said they saw
Not
it was
totally peanut butter, but like.
peanut butter, so they never fully put it in their warehouse.
They did.
So
They
from
used,
the
like,
truck.
It was organic.
But I'm saying like, clean like most of
And they were like taking the pallets off.
So do they just don't wanna be liable, cause like it was like there for like a little bit, or like is that like, cause they like received it, and that's why they don't want it distributed to like a people?
So usually what happens in the logistics process of selling any type of fruit, vegetable, non-perishable food, whatever, it is, even if it's under contract with somebody, they don't own it till it's on their facility. So that's why, like, with my family doing produce trucking, we'll have a lot of rejected loads, because they'll look in and they'll see a damaged box. And so they'll say, right, because the moment they take it off the truck, it's then theirs. But if they leave it on the truck, they're not liable. And so we then have to figure out either how to rebox it or find somebody to donate the food so that they don't make anyone. So it kind of comes into those like contract terms. What is the best issues with that of like who owns? And sometimes it can really screw the trucker over because sometimes if they're like an independent trucker, they are liable for it when it's on their truck. Once it leaves the processing facility or the packaging plant, it's no longer their product anymore.
So,
So someone getting left with a heavy bill.
So is that the conflict like that, like parts of the early shipment, like
I
which
think
facility
you
were
kind
used?
of argue either
And
way.
then like,
Either
but they're gonna take
donation
the rest
or,
of it?
And then said,
you mean,
because they
because
rejected
the
it.
only, it was tested.
Things that cost some land, bankruptcy, which is then going to affect the growers that they were contracted
But
with.
it also
because
said
they're
that
not
it's
gonna
tested.
Be able to follow through with those contracts, like there's that trickle down effect of cost.
We know there's always that.
So many things.
I mean, I agree.
They have parts of it.
So they could already accept part of the ship. Yeah, so then they're now liable for that.
I mean, the toilet
they-
pays half of it.
All right, so it sounds like most groups have kind of worked through what the scenario is and kind of your perspective on it. Let's first make sure we're all on the same page with what's happened. Can someone describe to me between these two news articles, what is the ethical dilemma that's going on? Like what has led to this dilemma?
Is it like, who is held accountable for all of this, like peanut butter gone bad / wasted?
Yeah, so we have 25 tons of peanut butter that have been dumped in a landfill. Why was it dumped in a landfill?
Because Costco didn't want it distributed because like early parts of the shipment were in their warehouse and they would be liable.
So Costco had contracted with Sunland growers to buy this organic peanut butter from them. But the terms of the contract were and this is very typical in any type of logistics of food. So I don't know if I shared, my family does produce trucking, so we deal with this on a daily basis. But essentially, Costco can say, okay, I'm going to buy these 25 tons of peanut butter from you, but they're not liable to pay for it until it's off the truck in their facility, right? So what happened is they deliver the peanut butter and Costco says it's leaky. There's oil leaking out of it. It could be contaminated, we're not going to do it. So they don't pay Sunland. What does Sunland say? We've had it tested. We know there's nothing wrong with it. You said you were going to do this for us, but now because you're not going to pay and fulfill your contract, we have to file for bankruptcy, and we've already been in financial strain because of the salmonella outbreak that happened the year prior, right? People aren't buying as much peanut butter. They may have had salmonella in there, so they had a lot of expense in cleaning everything up. You name it. Because they filed for bankruptcy, how does that affect peanut growers? They don't have anywhere to go now to process their peanuts. And the particular peanuts that they grow are used specifically for peanut butter. Okay, so they're not necessarily ones that you're gonna go buy off the shelf at the grocery store and eat, or put in jars just to eat as nuts, okay? And then we have the food bank. How's the food bank play into this scenario? They're wondering, why didn't we get the peanut butter? Why did we send 25 tons of peanut butter to be dumped in the landfill? So this is a true story. These are pictures. This is Sunland inside where they make the peanut butter. These are some of the pallets being dumped out in the landfill. So here's the first question. What is the effect the sale of the plant, so the Sunland processing plant, what effect will that have on local growers of Valencia peanuts?
They don't want anyone to sell their peanuts to.
Yeah, they're going to have to go out of state, or if they find another processing facility, it's going to be further away, so there's more travel costs involved with that, yada, yada, yada. Okay? What did y'all say in your groups were probably some of Costco's reasons for saying that the peanut butter needs to be destroyed or sent to the landfill?
The leaky oil.
What about the leaky oil?
And that it just could be, that there's a fact that it's coming out of the jar, so there could be things going into the jar as well.
Okay. So if something's coming out, that means there's room for something to go in. Don't want to deal with that. What are some other reasons Costco said send it to a landfill?
We just wanted to cover our butts because, like, if there was something wrong with it, and then we sent it to the food bank, and then something happened from that peanut butter, it would come back on us, and we didn't want that liability.
Okay. Any group feel different? That you're like, Costco should have done something different?
I think it may have just been like the fear of how Sunland did have a salmonella outbreak beforehand, and so it's just like they're fearful that it could happen again.
So just like being overly cautious. And anybody talk about like what would it be like for a consumer to buy a jar of peanut butter and it be oily when they pick it up? Anybody think Costco maybe was concerned about that? Like, oh, they're not going to be able to sell it anyways. Maybe is something that they thought, right? From your perspective, what did your group say was best for you? Sunland, what would have been best for you?
We agreed that Costco should pay at least for the shipments that they accepted, because they accepted it, then that makes them liable for whatever happens with that peanut butter.
Okay. So at least paid for some of it. Costco, what did you say? What would be best for you?
Like accepting the shipment and selling peanut butter that consumers would feel comfortable purchasing, and so that Costco can make a profit off of it.
Okay. Food bank, what would have been best for you?
To get the peanut butter,
Why would that have been best?
it would have fed a lot of people.
Yeah. So why do y'all think that didn't happen? Why did it not go to the food bank?
Why didn't you go to the food bank?
Why did the peanut butter go to the landfill?
I think it falls back to what we said, like we're just trying to cover ourselves, and we didn't want to get caught up in any mess that we didn't want to be in. And so it was just easier to say that it's no good and just to throw it away versus, here, this could make you sick.
Yeah. So this concern of like, if we wouldn't sell it to our consumers, we wouldn't give it to a food bank. Sunland, why didn't y'all step up and have us say more on what should happen with this? How does that make you feel to think like, okay, we've processed all this peanut butter and they're just gonna throw it out. Why didn't y'all step up and take a side? What were y'all concerned about?
I mean, I think I don't know, I'm confused about the timeline too. I'm not sure if like at this point they're being, like their facilities being bid on. Like, are they already out of the game? Like, did they already get auctioned off or?
Not yet.
Oh.
Going through all the legal process. Bankruptcy takes a while. And that's it. Take a reason. Right? But why do you think Sunland didn't say, no, we don't want our trash food, you know, we don't want this peanut butter in a landfill, we want it to go to the food bank. Why might they have stayed silent on that a little bit?
They probably, like, have the mentality of, we processed the peanut butter, they accepted it, it's off of our hands. And because of like their current situation of like trying to recover from the previous outbreak and trying to stay in business, they probably thought it was like not good publicity to get involved.
You're like, we just want to be paid. We
Yeah.
don't care if it gets sold on the shelves or donated somewhere, we just want our money so that we don't go under, right? Food bank. Why do y'all feel like nobody donated to y'all?
Big company just trying to save their butts on something that they probably messed up.
What were some of your reasons for why they should have donated to you?
It got tested, it was fine.
It was tested, it was fine. So we knew there wasn't salmonella in it.
But when did it get tested? Was it whenever they were in the warehouse, or once it got transported, or right before they put it into the landfill?
What does the scenario say? What did that news article say? When did it say it was tested? That's a good question. When should food be tested for?
Before it's packaged, I think.
I always say a processing facility like that, especially for animals, there's always an FDA inspector on site. That's a legal obligation to make sure that nothing happens. So when it does leave the peanut butter corporate to be packaged and shipped off, there is an FDA inspector that says this is good to go.
Yes. So it typically happens at the processing facility. It's usually one of the last things. That's why we do a lot with labeling. We have tracing, right? Again, that's been something, if you haven't kept up with, like in the meat industry, it's a little bit harder to trace sometimes foodborne illnesses, but with produce or non-perishable products, oftentimes you can trace back to the pallet something was on, to the box it was in, to the jars it was beside, because everything has an identification, and that's how they test every little bit. So they know leaving the facility, everything was fine. So, ethical dilemma, what should have been done? What would have been the right thing? Or was the right thing done? We know it got dumped in a landfill. Was that the most ethical decision? Why are you shaking your head no?
I think it could have been used for other things instead of just being wasted altogether.
Isn't peanut butter at least compostable? I could have composted it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think just like that image of like food, pallets and pallets of food being thrown away to a landfill. That just, I don't know, it's kind of heartbreaking.
With exactly what happened, with it being sent to the dump, what ethical theory was followed? Ultimately, the decision was to dump it. Was that egoism, utilitarianism, or altruism?
Egoism.
Okay, so we got some folks saying
I
egoism.
think it kind of just depends on how you would look at it, because it could be, for the betterment of the people. Or
How so?
Well, just, yeah, instead of like distributing it and making, people getting sick and possibly dying from what I know that it was tested and it was fine, but like I said, if stuff was coming out of it, there's a possibility stuff is coming into it.
Yeah, so we kind of teeter between, if we just look at, okay, Costco decided not to send it to the food bank and they dumped it. We would, our kind of gut reaction is to say egoism, that they did what was best for them. But Costco could argue and say that their decision was more utilitarianism, that they did what was best for the most. So when we look at things that way, there's always going to be kind of this idea of there's going to be some winners, there's going to be some losers, right? Unfortunately, the food bank was the loser in this situation. They didn't get the food, but the winners were their consumers, right? Costco got what they wanted, and consumers weren't going to get potentially contaminated or leaky peanut butter. Do we agree with that though?
I think Costco's really the only one that won, because they're the ones that put it in a defunct warehouse for a period of time. I
Ah,
think they're just trying to save their butts on what could have been a huge legality issue and could have ruined the entire company.
absolutely. So it's dicey, right? What would have been the altruistic decision? To do what's best for others. What could Costco have done?
At least like donate the ones that were tested to be safe and to consume, and donate that.
Altruistically, Costco could have donated some and paid some to someone, right?
Or they could have just, dropped it off and said, this isn't our problem anymore.
Yeah. Bobby made a good point though. How could have donating it have been a good thing for Costco?
That's
What
good on them.
looks good on them, so you get some PR. But what else? What's a tactile thing that they would have gotten out of donating? Why do businesses donate a lot? Write-offs. Yeah. So they could have still gotten something out of donating.
And the food bank would have picked it up.
Yeah. Bree, were you going to add something to that?
I was just gonna say, it also says that Costco paid $60,000 just to transport it to the landfill. So there's a possibility that they would have not had that cost as well.
Yeah, they would have saved themselves $60,000 in transportation. Absolutely. The last question on here, it talks about evidence of principles of ethical leadership. So this would be in the chapter that you read and in the PowerPoint notes, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it in class. But there's 5 principles to ethical leadership. So, regardless of what theory is used to make decisions, we can say that we can kind of determine something's ethical if we see these 5 things. If we see respect, service, justice, honesty, and community, right? We know ethical leadership is happening if these things are manifested, if people are being treated with respect, if we're providing service to each other, if we build community, right? If those things are happening around us, then we know we're in a pretty ethical leadership situation. Based on these viewpoints, do you see any of these principles happening in any of these viewpoints? Do you see somebody building community? Do you see people seeking justice? Do you see people manifesting respect or service? Anybody say no? You don't see any of those things?
I think this whole deal is just pretty selfish. Like, you have a business who's going out of business, so they're gonna really try and fight for every penny. Then you have a large company who probably only cares about their own name. They don't want to sell this peanut butter. They probably only donate just for tax purposes and PR. The whole thing's just kind of selfish.
Yeah. So it's we can look at decisions and we can use those 3 theories to say, okay, this is the type of ethical theory they are operating under. But then to really make that decision of, well, is it ethical? We're looking for those 5 things. And I think that's a good tool, a good thermometer that we can use in trying to decide and say whether things are ethical or not, rather than it just being this opinion-based thing that we kind of say, well, that goes with my ethics or not. We can say, no, do we see these outcomes happening? Do we see, again, community building, service, justice, all of those 5 things? And so kind of looking at this situation, it's hard to find. It's hard to find someone that was showing respect towards each other, right? It's hard to see a principle of service. It's hard to see there being justice, so this idea of there being honor brought back to something. Do you feel like everybody was being honest in this situation? Not fully. There wasn't a whole lot of transparency between what was going on. And did this build community or break down community? kind of broke down. It probably severed some business ties, right? So hopefully kind of this case study helps you understand how we use these ethical principles in real world, real life situations. It's easier to do after the fact though, right, than during it sometimes. So to make sure that you get credit for the case study, make sure your name is on it and turn it into Aaron. For exam purposes, y'all want to listen to this, exam purposes, there is a PDF of the case study in Canvas, so you can always use that to go back and refer to. When it comes to ethical leadership, what you want to make sure you know those 3 theories. Make sure you know the toxic triangle, there's 3 different parts of it, and kind of what characterizes the 3 parts. And make sure you know what those 5 principles of ethical leadership are. So again, it's in your notes as far as the PowerPoints go, and it's in your reading. So next week, we're going to pick up on